Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the special town hall on blockchain. As you're all aware, the Institute of Supply Chain Management is a thought leadership institute in the area of supply chain planning, sourcing, and technology as it applies to all these domains. At the Institute, we believe that technology is not a standalone function in itself, but something that is deeply twined with our businesses and our processes. And therefore, everything that we do needs to have a technology overlay on it. And therefore, we do not have a separate vertical on technology, but we weave technology into every aspect of supply chain. At the Institute, we do offer a number of certifications and education and training programs. Apart from that, we also have ISCM forums, which organizes events and webinars. Today, we are having a webinar on mapping out blockchain rollout in an automotive supply chain. I welcome you to this webinar on behalf of the Institute of Supply Chain Management and ISCM forums. And I also thank our presenting partner, Blockage. A word about Blockage. Blockage is an end-to-end blockchain infrastructure management and automation platform to build and scale enterprise blockchains of the future. This platform facilitates blockchain adoption with zero coding efforts. Blockage is headquartered in New Jersey, USA, and not only helps build blockchain networks, but also manages the ongoing operations. And today we are going to discuss a very specific application or a series of applications of blockchain specifically in the domain of the automotive supply chain. I thank Blockages for coming on board as our partners for this event. And before we start with the day's proceedings, I would like to request all my audience to keep sending us your questions so that we can take it up. All relevant questions will be taken up, and in your typing in your questions, request you to also address it to the person whom you would like to answer. With that brief, I am now would like to introduce my distinguished guests for the evening. This evening, we are splitting it into two parts of it. The first part is a panel discussion where we will talk about the mapping of blockchain rollout. We'll be talking more of the implementation challenges. And the second part of the evening, we will have with us a very distinguished blockchain researcher and specialist from Ford Motor Company, Pramita, Mitra. We will have her at around 7 o'clock. From 7 to 7:30, she would be having a chat with us. And in the first part of it, we'll be having a chat with four very distinguished and I would say power performers in the area of blockchain, people who have not only worked on it, but also have spent considerable amount of time thinking about things and how to roll it out. Again, without any ado, we have with us Vilas Wakale, who is the head digitization and chief digital officer at ŠKODA Automobiles, a division of Volkswagen. As head of digitalization in ŠKODA, he is responsible for driving digitalization initiatives, including inculcating the culture of digitalization in the organization. Welcome, Vilas.
Thank you. Thank you, Girish.
We have with us Rajeev Chopra, Senior General Manager, Strategic Sourcing, Supply Chain and Program Management at TAFE. Rajeev is a die-hard supply chain professional, and he will bring his expertise of insights into how can these functions benefit from blockchain? We have with us Kumar Guru, Chief Growth Officer at Blockage, an innovative and intuitive technology executive evangelizing blockchain at Blockage. Welcome, Kumar. We also have Diwakar, we will also have with us Diwakar Muthu, who will be joining us in a few moments.
Girish, Diwakar here. Apologies, I was on another important meeting. I couldn't finish that earlier.
No issue.
I apologize. So I've joined. Just wanted to let you know. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. So we have with us Diwakar Muthu, the product manager at Ford Motor Company. His area of expertise is blockchain solutioning and architecture. And the host for the evening is, I am the host for the evening. My name is Girish, and I am the executive director. I'm the director of the Institute of Supply Chain Management, and I look after education and training initiatives at the institute. With that, we will start the day's proceedings. Let me give you a brief overview of what we will be discussing. Many new technologies hold great promise in supply chains. The challenge is to identify the right technology that we can invest in. Not only should it be a right technology, but also it should be the right time. A very specific case is that of blockchain. A few years back, blockchain was supposed to be somewhere out there in the future. But suddenly they have gained a lot of interest and are set for rapid growth. What made this transition? Why do we think that blockchains today are something that organizations should be focusing on? Primarily because over the last couple of years, our supply chains have been disrupted like never before. We have seen both the demand and the supply side disruption, and we still are not over the disruption. We still today are having lockdowns in China, port congestions across the world, shortage of containers, freight rate shooting up. So we are still not out of the woods. And how does blockchain help us? Blockchain offers us solutions to growing problems of how to manage an increasingly complicated network of manufacturers and suppliers. More specifically, when what we need is transparency, speed, and agility. As consumer demand more and more transparency and complexities of supply chains increase, we need an effective way to trace the material used in the final product, right from source to the consumer and probably back again, going by sustainability and the 360-degree supply chains that we are talking about. However, there will be a number of challenges. The technology is still in the early supply, is in the early trial stage. Industry is still learning about challenges to security, cost, and implications. And we still are trying to figure out what is the best application that we can roll out our blockchains for. With that short introduction, I would like to start off the day's proceedings by inviting each of my panelists to make a brief opening statement on how they see blockchain and where does it fit in a supply chain. If I could start with you, Rajeev.
Yeah, Girish. Thank you for a very great introduction and to set up this space for all of us. Thank you for giving this opportunity again. Companies are definitely looking nowadays to invest on newer digital technologies, which definitely promise them a robust and agile supply chain. So saying this, considering why blockchain suddenly has become so rapidly important. So I would say that they offer a solution to the growing problem, how to manage the complicacy, the networking of suppliers and manufacturers, how to build transparencies, you rightly said, speed and agility. Now, when we talk about TAFE, we have about 300 suppliers. Definitely, when we are talking about them, it's across the multiple platforms, applications, technologies, what we use in our tractors. And I say that blockchain offers a decentralized approach for data management and sharing and bringing more speed, responsiveness, and transparency. Uh, if you say, are we using in TAFE? No, we are not. Does blockchain will bring newer advantages to us? Yes. So yes, this topic of today is a very interesting topic, and we should all discuss more on as we go further. Looking forward from all my panelists, esteemed panelists, to learn more from them. This is my opening comments on blockchain.
Thanks, Rajeev. Yes, speed, agility, and two things that supply chains today are in dire need of. Diwakar, if I could invite you for your opening comments on what is a blockchain and where does it fit in the supply chain?
All right. So a very happy evening to all my fellow panelists. I'm happy to be here. Blockchain as such, if we have to really look at it, it is essentially, we call it a distributed ledger, meaning there is now, we don't have a single database, but it is kind of spread across multiple parties so that you don't need to depend on a single database. So you have information that is actually distributed and that is available across multiple stakeholders and then multiple parties. The second benefit that it allows you is essentially where it fits an organization is, especially when you are having multi-stakeholder collaboration, or you have cross-border trade, or you have anything that is concerned with logistics or supply chain. These are all some of the areas where blockchain has seen some increased applicability over the last couple of years, especially around supply chain. The key things that are actually coming are essentially around increasing traceability of the materials that are being used in manufacturing, especially if you are using any sustainable goods, then yes, you need to ensure that the right standards are actually passed on. And having that traceability across to customers, to your end customers, it allows you to kind of build on your brand equity. The second thing is around, if you're in the contract manufacturing space or if you're the outsourced manufacturing space, it allows you to improve your visibility, because it allows you to kind of view what the suppliers are going through, what their inventory levels are, how can we plan better, all those things that can be done. If you really look at, there are also some secondary benefits we could come out. One is essentially it improves your credibility aspect, because the more transparent you are, the more agile and more information you are actually providing to your suppliers, it allows you to kind of build on that, and then it would allow you to build on your brand as well. And most important thing, what we have seen based on the prototypes or other things we have done, is blockchain allows us to have a great platform which allows us to engage with stakeholders, which we have seen is something which is very, very beneficial from an organization point.
Thanks, Diwakar. That was indeed a very comprehensive introduction to what a blockchain is. And Vilas, if I could bring you in at this point in time and probably ask you, how can blockchains add value in an end-to-end supply chain? If you could also spend some time talking on that.
Yeah, thanks. So I think Diwakar already explained about the concepts behind blockchain. I just want to relate with the day-to-day example. In fact, this is a small story. When I was a child, one person visited to our home. This is like almost 30 years back story. So that person had come and he was having a totally different attire, like coming with a big turban and long mustaches. So obviously he was different from a normal scenario. So I was very curious, and when interacting with him, he was focusing on two things. One thing is he wanted to know the kind of a current status about our family members, if there is any addition and any death in the family. At the same time, he was willing to share our family tree, our ancestors and all that. So that actually excited me to have more interaction with him. And then I realized that probably he's having the kind of a total history with of our family, and I was feeling really a kind of that was a royal feeling I got that point of time. Being childhood, I just it wiped up from my memory. But again, almost after 25 years, a similar person came to visit. I was at a different place at that point of time, but then after education and all, I could relate the old story with the today's one. And then I realized that these guys actually are maintaining our family history, and then they are maintaining generations over generations. Generally, they are called as the pandas. Maybe many of us might be aware of that. But then today I could relate what they are doing is they are maintaining a family history ledger, generations over generations. And yes, I think relentlessly they are doing those activities. Now, when I relate this kind of a ledger management with our current supply chain activities, then I can see a lot of similarities between these two activities, and that's what I thought of bringing to all of our attention. So generally, like for producing any product, what is our the goal of a supply chain management today is to involve the supply chain management wants to be involved into the design, the planning, execution, control, and monitoring of the goods and services journey throughout, so that they can add value to the final product. And who are these stakeholders we are talking here about? Literally everybody, like the raw material producer or supplier, right? Then we are talking about the manufacturer who takes the raw material from the producer and then produces his goods. Then we are talking about the distributors. We are talking about the wholesalers and retailers, and then finally the end users. So how do these people add value to the final product? So as a raw material producer, the ask would be, can I provide the origin and quality metrics of my product to a global and transparent way? So in today's supply chain, is it really possible? I mean, we take an example of diamond buying. Yes, if the details about the raw material and even the mine, if those are provided in a transparent and authenticate way, there will be more buyers for that product. Similarly, if I talk about manufacturer, the manufacturer wants to monitor the products till the final destination, especially about the raw material quality at their fingertips. Is it possible in today's supply chain management? Something we need to think about. As a distributor and wholesaler, they also have their own challenges. They want to bring trust in the entire supply chain. So at any given point of time, if they can provide that trust to the end user, there will be more buyers for that product. As a retailer, yes, they will also want to ensure that the trust is built and then there is an authenticity and certification about the product so that it can be shared with the end user. And as an end user, if I get information about the trustworthiness of the product, its origin, its quality, and then the compliances, the product, the manufacturer and the entire chain followed, if all this information is available at fingertips, then I think I will be more than happy to go ahead and buy that product, even with some premium. So these are some of the kind of stakeholders and asks from each of the stakeholders in today's supply chain management. And how do we address that? In a traditional supply chain management, I think there are challenges, and those probably cannot be addressed. Challenges such as scalability. We are talking about huge amount of stakeholders. Just take the example of the family tree. So many people are there, and then those stakeholders gets added as the time flows. Same thing happens with the supply chain as well. Performance, we want information at our fingertips, but then in current supply chain system, is it possible? Probably there are some hiccups. consensus at every given point of time. We need to get consent from the stakeholders, and we also need to ensure that the information is not tweaked, right? Privacy also another issue probably in current supply chain management. We want to have some transactions secured and all that, but is it really possible? There is a question mark. Location, from where the product is coming, the raw material and all that. In current supply chain, I think there is no facility to provide these details. And of course, cost. Again, I will take the original example of the panda who was maintaining the family tree. He literally traveled physically to the end users like me, and then there is a limitation. Plus, there is a huge cost involvement apart from the delays and all that. The same thing happens with the current supply chain as well, that if we want to get all this information what we have been talking about, there is a huge cost involved. And all these kind of concerns probably I can say that would be addressed in today's blockchain solutions.
Thanks, Vilas. Kumar, if I could bring you in now, we heard from both Diwakar, Rajeev and Vilas on the various areas where blockchain can be used in an automotive supply chain. From an outside-in perspective, if you look at it, how can blockchain be integrated into the supply chain? Are blockchains today ready for mainstreaming? And are there any challenges to, and I'm sure that number of organizations have already started on pilot projects. A number of pilot projects have started off. Are there any challenges in scaling adoption of this technology?
Thank you, Girish, and thank you everyone for the opportunity. So, see, from a technology point of view, right? Yes, blockchain is relatively looked at as a new technology, right? But it is not new technology. It's actually more than 10 years old, right? It is working fine, right? When it comes to the use cases like Bitcoin and Ethereum, and several financial use cases have become mainstream, right? Now, how do we take the same technology that has been very successful there and use it towards the enterprise business use cases? So that whether it is automotive industry or the pharma industry or the manufacturing and supply chain aspects, across different verticals, whether it is an automotive that we want to track, or it is a drug, or it is a piece of diamond, or it is even the groceries, right? The vegetables, how to track them from end to end, is well accepted use cases for blockchain, right? So how do we go about integrating this? I think the idea is that every time something new technology comes, right, we have to go in the cycle, right? We first innovate, we come up with something small, something new, and then we adapt, and then we improvise, then we repeat, right? I think that's how we will. I think that's how the industry will eventually take it. Right now, we have done some proof of concepts and pilots, and some limited scale production, right? So we are in the phase of that innovation, and then eventually, that limited scale will be adapted. Then it will be improvised. Then we have to go back and do it again, right? So the key here is that when it comes to integrating the blockchain technology and take it to mainstream, right? It's incremental. Being incremental is the key, right? First, we can say, hey, I want to use blockchain for supply chain. Well, that is great. Supply chain is a use case for blockchain. In fact, it is the best enterprise use case actually, but it is a very broad statement, right? So now we have to identify, the specific use cases within supply chain. Within, for example, for us, it's an automotive vertical. We have to take. Then again, you go on that innovative. How do I envision this? This this single aspect of this use case into blockchain, and then involve some of the key industry participants, some of the top industry participants maybe, then implement that. Then over time, add more functionality. Over time, bring new people onto the blockchain network, and then over time, roll out some additional blockchain capabilities. Initially, we would want to use blockchain as a communication channel, and over the time, you add more and more, where you bring in smart contracts, for example, right, to do the work for us. So like that, being incremental is going to be the key. So is it ready to go mainstream? Yes. From a technology point of view, I will definitely say yes. I feel strongly that the technology is ready to go mainstream. However, the practicality of it, which is the blockchain is involving, by very definition, involves multiple players. Multiple players have to come on board and agree on it, which it makes it a little challenging to go live, right? The traditional IT systems, I can build something, I can implement within Ford, and then it becomes successful, and then it becomes adopted elsewhere, right? Any IT solution you can think of it that way. When it comes to blockchain, again, we are talking about an industry level solution, and some people say it is industry level revolutions, right? So now this takes time coming up with an ROI, which I feel it's obviously it's going to be a multi-year ROI. Trying to get our the business stakeholders understand this and get on board is a challenge, and then make it mainstream will happen eventually, right? So there is a technology aspect of taking it to mainstream. There are some challenges, but they can be overcome. And then there is a business aspect of it in terms of taking it to mainstream. So the both will have to come together at the industry level, right? Then we will be mainstream before we even realize it, right? And then the scaling again. When we are going in an incremental approach where we are innovating and adapting and then improvising, and then we are going through that constant cycle, then scaling will not be an issue, right? Do I think that we can take a blockchain and then scale through the entire supply chain volume of Ford or ŠKODA, right? Or any other automaker, GM or BMW? The answer is no, right? But when we go through this incremental process, it will be there, right? I have no doubts about it.
Thanks, Kumar. Yes, it's a very interesting, it's very pertinent that we need to start small and incremental, and as we gain confidence, we can unroll technology, because quite often what happens is that very ambitious enterprise-wide projects on new technologies are fraught with their own inherent challenges. And there will also be a reluctance by the ecosystem to accept these technologies, and therefore start small, prove it. And once the provenance is there, then you can have a faster enterprise rollout. It's a very nice and easy way of bringing in disruptive technologies. Diwakar, if I could bring you in now, I would also want to, one of our audience has also sent us a question on is blockchain solving current problems, and what is the value-added solutions that we are looking at. Along with that, if you could also handle about what are the practical challenges that enterprises face when they roll out a blockchain technology from a user perspective.
Okay. All right. So there were two parts to the question, Girish, if I heard it right. So one is, what are the practical challenges that are there if you're rolling out blockchain? Yes. And the second part of the question was, can you repeat that, please?
Is blockchain solving current problems, and what are the value additions that we can see?
Okay. All right. So, is blockchain solving the current problems? From a supply chain perspective, it's still an evolving space. right? Yes, it does serve, solve certain problems, especially in the supply chain. For example, IBM recently rolled out a vaccine passport, right? Which is absolutely crucial in this pandemic world where you need that information, and especially when you consider that health information is secretive in nature, you need a platform that is secretive enough to provide that data, right? So yes, there have been some limited use cases where we have really seen some benefits coming in, especially in terms of the mining use cases that we have seen, where or for conflict minerals, as we call it, certain minerals which are limited to only certain countries, and it needs so much of audit and so much of supervision on top. And today it is being done through disparate systems, disparate entities, separate audit agencies that are actually doing that work. Those things can all be kind of handled. Think about if you're sourcing cobalt from specific mines in Uganda or somewhere in Africa, you need to go through even a UN specified audit committees to clear out your goods or clear out your documents. So all those documents, you have it on the network today, where you could actually go see and then pick it up and then do. So that is that is essentially one benefit. And for mainstream supply chain, we are seeing some applications happening across the industry. Especially around the logistics side, we have seen some of the most published ones are is something like what Walmart Canada is doing today, where they have integrated their entire trucking systems, especially the complete set of truckers who are supplying to all the stores of Walmart in Canada. They are currently logging into a blockchain-based ecosystem where they are submitting invoices, they are getting themselves paid, and they have pretty much eliminated one huge audit. Pretty much one organization which was managing its audit for those invoices, that has been eliminated. But it is not, as one of my panelists said, it is not a straightforward and an easy fix. It requires a fair amount of forthright planning, because it is not just one team or one function that is actually adopting blockchain. When you say you are adopting blockchain, you are especially bringing together an ecosystem of players who are actually supporting you to build your product. Now, if those players are all not finding benefits on logging on to a platform like this, then it would not be a fruitful exercise. So there is a lot of discussion that needs to happen up front. There needs to be a lot of planning that needs to happen up front, and it needs to be incentivized in a particular way where your stakeholders see the benefits that you are also seeing, and then you see greater benefits so that you are able to bring that ecosystem live and thriving. That is number one. And number two, we are only tapping the very basic use cases for blockchain today. As we evolve, I'm definitely sure there are going to be much more better blockchain use cases that would ideally be that would ideally come. So that would be one of the other things which we should really look at. The third thing, I think we talked about the ROI. Whenever you are working on a emerging tech or an emerging platform, right? Calculating ROI is always difficult, and especially in a blockchain-based investment, when you have so much of third-party involvement or external stakeholder involvement, identifying that right ROI is always difficult. But where we should really talk is, I would classify it in two broad ways. One is you need to really look at the efficiency aspect of it. If you are doing a job today in X days, with blockchain, how much of that X can be reduced, right? What would be the delta that would add value, which is essentially your processing time, which is essentially your audit time or any other time that you are going to save. That would be number one. Number two is, this investment is a multi-year investment in my view. You cannot execute everything in a single year. It needs to be done iteratively, and you need to do it in a particular way where you start to see benefits coming out of the platform. And for that to happen, you really need to nail that use case down. You need to really see which functions are really suffering, which functions really need a solution like blockchain, which would help them to elevate. Like for instance, in today's scenario, if we take one common use case that I always see is visibility for me is a prime importance, especially in a post-pandemic world. Now, how can I get that visibility today? Today, it is being done through multiple systems, multiple feeds. You got multiple third-party agencies that are actually doing it, but still they're not that accurate, or they're not really giving you real time. So blockchain provides you an opportunity to build something on real time. So that is something which we should really target and see how we can really scale it up. And scaling up, it is never going to be big bang, because if you're trying to do big bang, it is not going to work. It has to be really in small iterations, and it is going to take some time as the infrastructure ecosystem for blockchain is also evolving, and we still don't know, right? We are all talking about doing certain things sustainably, while blockchain is talking about adding more resources. So we need to be cognizant of that fact as well, and then think about a solution that's going to balance all the scales, so that you are not really increasing something in favor of having some other benefit.
Thanks.
Girish, can I pitch in? Rajeev here.
Yeah, sure, Rajeev.
Yeah, just with my esteemed panelists, I think most of them have put up their point of how blockchain offers a more decentralized approach. And as I told in the beginning, that it brings more transparency, speed, and responsiveness in our ecosystem. So just to give a little more, understanding that if you want to make a checklist, do we really need a blockchain? So we need to understand that do we need to record and share data, transactions, have a contract, a secure way, in a permanent way, so that they are fully traceable, as one of our panelists also told about the story of a lineage and how the traceability and audit can be done. So the distribution ledger by a blockchain creates a permanent and a tamper-proof database. So we need to see that are we in this requirement. So other than that, we need to see the contractual transactions which blockchain can help at different levels and parties, and how to help in the facilitation. I will say time stamping, tracking, and automation of transactions, that events at a very different era of time. As it says, it's a long-term investment, helps us to get more precise data. Also, if we are in a manufacturing environment, and as I told, we have many suppliers, and the bigger problem now which we are facing is trust. And there is no central party which can help us to establish that trust. So blockchain can help us to build. Number one is the automation and the value of trust. So one study has also been done with the BCG, and what they say that when you require a very high value automation, also the value of trust, blockchain will definitely support. On the other side, contrary, if the value of trust is less and automation requirements is high, better go for control tower application. While if your value of trust is very high, while automation is less, go for a niche application. So there's the blockchain has a very limited value if your trust is less and the automation is less. So value of blockchain will always help when we have a high value of automation, a big amount of data, as you told, and the trust also plays a very, so smart contracts, as one of our panelists told, is generating that, guaranteeing the performance of bypassing some conventional ways, and execution of the contracts can happen more with a less kind of time and money. So this type of supply chain transaction can help for the raw materials or between the suppliers. So this type of smart contracts also will help us to introduce blockchain. That I wanted to pitch in. Sorry to.
Yes, no issues, Rajeev. That was indeed a good perspective from a user perspective, and as to how blockchains can play a role in supply chain and establishing trust, and how the ecosystem also needs to be geared up for technology initiatives. Vilas, if I could bring you in at this point in time and probably ask you a question which regards to what are the key risks and challenges in a blockchain rollout? I would also like you to take up a question which one of our audience has sent us, which is essentially, how can a recall be tackled if we have a blockchain? Does it help? Does blockchain help in rolling out of a recall in an automotive sector?
Sure, Girish. Yeah. Yeah, so maybe I will address the question first about the recall in automotive sector. So I think maybe many of the users also might have heard in the newspapers that, XYZ manufacturer recalled a group of vehicles, maybe because there was a complaint raised from the end user, or in their internal quality assurance, they found some defects, and then because of that, they had to recall. Now, let's understand that the blockchain, being a decentralized ledger, and then all the stakeholders involved, they are able to connect with the decentralized ledger and make their entries. So whenever a vehicle is manufactured, the vehicle identification number also is entered into the ledger, and so are the various components getting entered, plus the end user details, that who purchased which vehicle using the VIN number and all that. So if you can see that end-to-end traceability is available at fingertips, which at this point of time, if we want to identify that who all are the business users, the customers of the vehicles, then we have to probably go through the dealership network, and if the databases are not in sync and manual intervention is required, then there is a huge delay in approaching to the end users. But if blockchain being there, we know the end users who are getting impacted, and maybe they have not experienced that problem, but we can immediately intimate them that yes, there is a problem, and please don't drive, otherwise you might get some difficulties or challenges. So that way we can mitigate the accidental risks, as well as give an assurance, and also the replacement also will be very speedy and easy. So that's how we can manage the recall in the automotive sector. Coming to the second question about the limitations and probably the potential risks using the blockchain, I think as we all have been discussing, that being a very new technology at this point of time, and yes, almost all the sectors probably are digitalized, they are having the computer systems, and likewise now the current supply chain system, if we want to convert that into a blockchain kind of system, then there is a concern about integration. What happens to the existing systems? Probably we will have to change the existing systems significantly, or completely replacing with the new ones, right? So we have to have a long-term transition plan in place, so that the integration can be taken care smoothly. The another limitation I would say, and again related to the potential risk, is that in current supply chain system, we use the RFID devices, or the 2D barcodes, or the near field communication devices to link the physical products with the digital systems, right? But yes, to ensure the flow of information, we have to ensure that all the steps of the supply chain and all the products have to be tagged digitally. So we have to start planning how to add those digital tagging in the existing supply chain, so that we can be prepared for the blockchain rollout in a large scale. Then another limitation or a potential risk, I would say, is about the control and security, as well as privacy, right? So yes, while still there are solutions available, but blockchain being a new technology, I would say, so there are still some cybersecurity breach concerns which needs to be addressed, right? So it's very, very important to choose a right blockchain solution partner, and also test the application very thoroughly, do a thorough proof of concept before rolling out with a big bang approach. So that's the kind of a mitigation we can plan for controlling and security and privacy related risks. Another showstopper or hurdle I would say is a cultural adoption. Being new technology, there is always a kind of a resistance. And yeah, it's a mindset change as well from the centralized network to the decentralized ones. So we need to get a buying in from the users and the operators. So it's not just limited to the IT manpower, but the end users also need to understand the potential and then how they can adopt this new technology. So a lot of, as I mentioned, that the cultural awareness also is very, very important to take care in the blockchain.
Thanks, Vilas. Yes, you did bring out quite a few challenges in terms of security, specifically, given what the way IT systems are proliferating and digitalization is moving on. No enterprise can be safe enough. And specifically in situations like where we are today, where we are working from home, our networks are all wide open. And therefore, it becomes a lot more interesting to see how we could do it. And as you said, yes, we need to also have a cultural affinity towards adoption of new technology. Not only should it be top down, but also the bottom level should accept the technologies that we are proposing and use it to the best as possible. Kumar, if I could bring you in at this point of time. You heard Vilas and also Vilas talk about the challenges, and you also heard Diwakar and Rajeev talk about the opportunities and value additions. And Vilas also brought in a very interesting part of, how do I identify, how do I know that my partner or the technology which I choose is the right technology? For example, if I'm not mistaken, there are at least 5 major protocols that blockchain has: Ethereum, Hyperledger, 5 different protocols, and therefore, are we moving towards interoperability, and therefore should we should I as a user be worried about these various protocols? And B, can we have service providers who would insulate the enterprise from such multiplicity of protocols? That's one part of the question. The second part of the question is, what is it that as an ecosystem we need to have for a blockchain rollout? So kind of 2 questions, one a protocol issue and the other one as ecosystem. How can we as ecosystem pick it up?
Sure, no problem. Thank you. So there are a lot of interesting things, right, from Diwakar, from Vilas and Rajeev, right?
Yes.
So now I want to start with just one other example again from Walmart, right? See, here in the US, the produce recall, right? When there is a listeria, some kind of a bacteria outbreaks in lettuce or any other vegetable or grocery items, they pretty much come from all over the world. A lot of them come from South America, right? It takes weeks for Walmart to figure out what is the source of contamination and how to remove contaminated food from the shelf, right? Because the only way they can figure out is that based on when people report from different parts of the country about the outbreak, right? Then they have to figure out how to piece the puzzle together. Now they have implemented blockchain, and now they're able to figure out in literally in 3 seconds, right? It used to take up to 3 weeks. Now it is in seconds. They're able to figure out where the outbreak happened. What is the source of it? Did it happen in a truck, in a specific truckload, or did it happen in a warehouse where the produce are coming and being assembled and then distributed? Or did it happen in a specific farm in a specific city? All of that, they're able to figure it out, right? Right when the first outbreak happened, right? So that, pretty much in same day under this use case, that they're able to remove the products from the shelves, right? So that is the success story, right? And once it becomes, fully adopted across all types of, producers, then, it makes it much more safer and much less riskier for Walmart, much more safer for us, the consumers, right? There is definitely, lot of efficiency that comes with this, where we can relatively easily build an ROI, right? So our challenge is that, in the automotive supply chain, how can I come up with, an use case like that, right? We talked about a recall, for example. So the auto industry is historically known to have two things. One, recall too much, right? Number two, they end up paying, fines, right? The fines that they pay to the US government is, especially, very tricky, where, they make an extrapolation and then say, we think, this much damage, so you have to pay this many $1 million, $150 million. It's just an estimate, right? And then the auto manufacturer, they always end up negotiating. They don't have the facts on their side, right? With the blockchains, the moment one issue is reported in Atlanta, another issue is reported in New York, they can instantly figure out the issue is coming up from, this issue is from a steering, and then this steering is supplied by, one of these three of my suppliers, right? Because, I, as a, let's say GM, let's say they're using three vendors to supply their steerings. When we look at steering, it's just, it looks like some simple thing, right? But inside the steering, there is just a lot of parts, right? So that particular vendor who is supplying to GM, for example, not all of the steerings from the vendor may have an issue, right? It may be just one specific part coming from, one of the many suppliers, right? Some nuts and bolts, or, some electronic part from many of their suppliers. That is those steerings that are having the problems, for example, right? So it instantly allows us, right, learning from the Walmart use case, right? It instantly allows us to figure out which, how many products need to be recalled. And number two, it allows us to recall early. Number three, because the manufacturer is reacting quickly, there is no malicious intent, right? It's not like manufacturers are sloppy and then they don't want to address the issue, they want to drag their feet on, right? It is not the case, right? Instead, because it is being addressed early, they don't get in trouble, end up paying $150 million as a fine to US government or any other government, right? So like that, there are very, very interesting business cases are there in our automotive supply chain, right? When it comes to blockchain-based use cases, right? So what is the right technology, right? The technology that we decide is really based on the actual use case, right? So Hyperledger Fabric is there; it's very successful. It's definitely the top of blockchain protocol, or we can say platform. Ethereum is there. It is also very, very successful, very, very popular. Corda is another one, right? They all have their own strengths. They all have their own weaknesses. Some people, wonder, will we eventually settle into one? Definitely not, right? We did not settle with just one programming language, right? People said a long time ago, when Java comes, everything else will go away, right? That is not the case. So same thing, right? All these platforms are here to stay, and yes, people are already solving the problem of how to make these platforms work together. So that is not an issue. That interoperability is already being figured out, right, by many players. And then how do I build the ecosystem, right? See, the good thing is that we are living in the age of cloud, and we are living in the age of automation, which is the key, right? So using technology to automate normal things, right? So by the cloud allows us to expand and shrink instantly, right? I can build a mega data center overnight, right? And then tomorrow I can, not want any of it, and then I can go back to a single server, right? Cloud allows us to do it, right? So I think the ideal way to do is, to have as a partners join. As partners get together, build a blockchain network, and invite more people to build the blockchain network. I think the best way is to leverage an automation platform like what we build here in Blockage, right? To build the blockchain infrastructure on top of the cloud, so that it is instantly elastic and it is instantly global in nature, right? Somebody from US, somebody from Europe, somebody from India, doesn't matter, right? They can go on Amazon AWS or Microsoft Azure or Google Cloud. So any of these clouds, right? You can deploy the blockchain infrastructure and let it scale. And also, see the cloud, when cloud came, people were concerned about security. I don't know how I can trust. I know this building where I have all of my servers, I know it is secure, but how do I trust, the cloud, right? Now it is proven that the cloud security is far more superior, right? The best cloud security engineers are working in Amazon and Microsoft and Google, right? So as a result, they are secure. It is proven. So we have to, Vilas, brought up security concern, right? So we build on top of that, right? And make sure that the security is integrated right from, building a cloud server all the way up to deploying the right blockchain distributed technology and then making sure that everything is secure, right? Things gets easier to scale, when we make sure that from an infrastructure point of view, we bring in automation and then automate the process of building the blockchain network and then managing the blockchain network.
Thanks. Thanks, Kumar. That was indeed summed it up very nicely. Yes, as technology, we do have, and it's very heartening to hear also that we will not have challenges, that interoperability will not be a major issue, and that there are people working on creating standards who would create that interoperability, and also that security also is being taken care of, because that's one of the concerns which a lot of people would be from the view of security. We have come to the end of the time allotted to us for the discussion. I thank Kumar, Diwakar, Rajeev, and Vilas for the time that you have taken off to discuss this crucial issue with us. I thank also Blockage for partnering with the ISCM forums to bring this to you. We will now quickly shift into a small transition where we will go from a panel to a fireside chat. Just before that, I would like to kind of sum up the whole discussion by looking at the challenges that blockchain seeks to address in terms of supply chain. Most of the challenges of supply chain today has been very clearly articulated by Rajeev, Vilas, and Diwakar in terms of agility, in terms of visibility, in terms of track and trace. We also talked about how Walmart and organizations like that are able to identify specific batches which have problem and recall those particular products off the shelf, or even they get into a vehicle, how to identify those vehicles and get them back. So yes, track and trace becomes a very important aspect of how blockchains are. Blockchains also could find application in vehicle leasing, vehicle financing. Remember, blockchains started off with finance as the backbone, and then we later on shifted it to now we are looking at applications within the enterprise, including supply chains. And I think as go forward, we also will see blockchains having a large role to play in sustainability initiatives, because that also becomes crucial to organization going forward. And yes, Venkat, blockchain is indeed common. There is no database as such. It's kind of data written into blocks, which is available across by all participants in the block. If you're given access, if it's in a private blockchain, if you're given access to that particular chain, you would have access to the data. In a public blockchain, anyone can see the data. Therefore, if today we are talking mostly in corporate world, we are talking of only private blockchains. The government talks about public blockchain, but we will talk about private blockchains where we would have a few ecosystem players forming a part of a blockchain. They will have access to the data and visibility of the entire data. Rupali, I would now request you to take over and probably have the transition to the next session. Let me once again thank Vilas, Diwakar, and Kumar and Rajeev. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you for taking.
Thank you.
Thanks, Girish. Thanks, Rupali.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Rupali?
Yes, Girish.
You can transition. Before we bring in Pramita.
Every once in a while, there comes a technological innovation that shakes up the world. Personal computers, the World Wide Web, cloud computing. A new revolution is dawning upon us. Blockchain. It's here, and it's here to stay. Oh, and it's here to do much more than mine bitcoins. Whatever your industry, finance, pharma, supply chain, or manufacturing, integrating blockchain networks in your business is desirable today and inevitable tomorrow. Built on the concept of a decentralized, distributed ledger, blockchain technology is secure, transparent, efficient, and, yes, intimidating. You might find yourself drowning in a sea of questions. Well, it doesn't have to be so complicated. Introducing BlockEdge, a no-code platform to accelerate your blockchain adoption. We unravel the complexity of enterprise blockchain transformation layer by layer. First, a multi-cloud, multi-blockchain setup to build and manage your nodes and network. Then, a simple, intuitive user interface where you can create distributed applications and automated smart contracts. And finally, a flexible integration platform that lets you consolidate data from multiple sources to fuel your blockchain network. Now, you can focus on building business use cases and forget about the hassle of blockchain adoption. We'll take care of that for you. BlockEdge helps you reduce deployment time by up to 80% and operational overheads by up to 60%. And with our support at every stage of your blockchain transformation, you can get all the competitive advantages of blockchain with none of the practical bottlenecks. Sign up for a demo and give your business the BlockEdge today.
Over to you, Girish.
Thanks, Rupali. And therefore, we do not, have a separate vertical. Yeah. We now move on to the second part of the evening, where we will be having a chat with Pramita Mitra. Pramita is a supervisor and IoT blockchain at Ford Motor. She also is the co-chair and co-chair supply chain WG at Mobility Open Blockchain Initiative at the Ford Motor Company in Detroit. Pramita, welcome to the chat, and hopefully we will be able to we'll be able to pick your brains on quite a number of issues which are at the forefront of almost all the users out here in India. They've been hearing of blockchain. We have been trying to run up some pilots, but still we need a lot more guidance and a lot more concerted efforts in bringing this technology out there into mainstream. And therefore, probably what we would like to start off with is that, as a business, and specifically when we look at automotive industry and we look at the supply chains that the automotive industry runs, where do you see blockchains coming in, and what is the kind of business value does blockchain bring to supply chains, specifically in the automotive sector?
Thank you, Girish and Rupali, for having me. Can you hear me well?
Oh, yes, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Loud and clear.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today and share a few thoughts. I had the opportunity to join at the tail end of the last panel, and I feel like you had a great discussion and all the questions were answered. So a lot of my answers may be repetitive, and if that is the case, please feel free to tell me and we can discuss the weather. I am absolutely fine with that.
I doubt it, Pramita, because I think what happens is that we also need to have multiple perspectives, and these are technologies which are really out there in terms of their novelty and their uses. And in India, we have a kind of ecosystem in which we operate, and we have certain limitations and constraints, and therefore we think within those constraints. So probably what you would be able to bring in is a perspective which goes beyond these constraints and probably takes it to where it should really be heading towards.
Right. Yeah, happy to share my learnings. I did want to mention one quick thing about what I do before I head into the answer. So MOBI, which is a nonprofit consortium and short for Mobility Open Blockchain Initiative. It is not a Ford initiative. It is a nonprofit NGO, and it is a consortium of multiple automakers and suppliers and blockchain technology providers. So MOBI is a community which is more than 100 members strong. And I just co-chair the supply chain working group under MOBI, but MOBI has about 7 working groups exploring different opportunities and use cases of blockchain technology in the automotive space. So just wanted to make sure, because I don't want to say that MOBI is a Ford initiative. Ford is just a humble participant, and Ford was one of the co-founders along with the other MOBI members. So again, back to your question, where does supply chain kind of feel relevant, right? Again, it could be, I guess, I also, the answer isn't very different from what I heard from some of the panelists, right? It's really around that end-to-end traceability that we really need in the supply chain, right? And that traceability is needed for a number of use cases. And if you kind of look at the life cycle, and when I describe a life cycle journey of a part, right, you can kind of imagine cradle to grave. And cradle would be the tier 2 or even sub-tiers material suppliers who are generating the material, automotive grade material. Then all the tier 1 suppliers who are sourcing from them and manufacturing parts and products, right? These are part manufacturers. Then come people like us or companies like us who are vehicle manufacturers. We assemble those parts into vehicles and then sell them to the end customers, which are vehicle owners. And then vehicle goes through its life in the field. And then at the end, there are also a whole body of stakeholders and players, such as the scrapyard owners, the recyclers, and other end-of-life processors, who kind of, in many cases, kind of make up a circular economy, right? And if you kind of want to achieve end-to-end traceability in such an ecosystem, it is a humongous task, right? And especially the way data has been generated, stored, and exchanged in our traditional automotive supply chain ecosystems. Usually data resides in a silo, and then we go to, a number of third-party integrators, right, who come and kind of build those connectors, APIs, numerous ways of connecting. And that's how this ecosystem, this data exchange system has become very complex, right? It's a very complex web of connectors and APIs, right? And customization has been king in that ecosystem for a long time. And while customization is good, it also gets in the way of standardization and interoperability, right? So that is how the system has works today and has worked for a very long time. And data kind of gets stuck in silos, right? And when I was reading, my blockchain journey started about in 2017, and I'm kind of self-taught about blockchain because my PhD in computer science was back in the day in distributed computing systems. Blockchains didn't exist back in the day, but because of my distributed computing systems background, it was a pretty natural journey into blockchain. But when I was reading and educating myself, there was one article, right, that I read, and I still kind of quoted because it is so true, from World Economic Forum. And they compare data as oil that is easily extracted and refined, but cannot be transported to the place where it is needed most. And I really like that example because it resonated with me, right? And that's really where I think, blockchain can come and really play a huge role in creating this secure and verifiable data sharing systems between or wherever there is a multi-party workflow. And I kind of really look at supply chain applications in the automotive as multi-party workflows.
Yes, quite interesting. In fact, in the previous panel also we did talk about interoperability and issues related to data and silos. In fact, one of the questions that we have from one of our participants from our audience is it possible to have a common database in blockchain? Would you like to take a shot at that?
Sure. I guess, the answer is both yes and no, right? If you have in the ideal or more of on the public blockchain view, then everyone who is on the blockchain and is running a node, right? They all have the same replica or of the nodes that they are hosting, right? And they have the upkeep of the network, right? So network management and maintenance and synchronization they have to take care of. And in that case, because each of the replicas, right, node replicas, they have a copy of the ledger, which is exactly the same in an ideal world. So in a way, you have a common but distributed database, right? Everyone has the exact same view. And so in a way, the answer is yes. But does that work for automotive supply chain is a whole different question, right? And we have to remember that automotive supply chains have very unique privacy requirements, right? And that's not only requirements of the stakeholders, but those are also requirements mandated by laws. And some of the, for example, the laws are, like data protection regulation and confidentiality requirements like antitrust laws and classification of business secret and so on, right? So one simple example is that attributes like price and volume of products could never be directly shared on blockchain or indirectly inferred from monitoring transactions between two parties, right? And those are some of the data sharing regulation and laws we still have to adhere to. And that's why the traditional concept of a public blockchain where each node is an equal and this shared common database doesn't quite apply.
I hope Venkat has the answer to that question, which he did ask. One of the other questions that we did talk about was the whole area of smart contracts. Yes, we have been talking about smart contracts, and there were at one point in time, at least in India, there was even a legality issue behind smart contracts, because that's again a Indian legal system, which is more wanting to talk about a signature in a document being a contract and not a piece of software code. Leaving that issue aside, if we look at smart contracts, what do you think is the scope for smart contracts in an automotive supply chain? Apart from the legal, in India, there is a legal issue, but I don't think overseas there has been a major issue in legality of smart contract. I think it's an accepted practice.
Yeah. And, like you said, that is exactly why this is not really an issue we discuss a lot, because we take it for granted.
Yes.
in the US, right? And so, this is an interesting question for me as well, because I have always taken it for granted. And the definition of smart contract, right, and what it allows you to do also is different, right? If you think about Ethereum blockchain, for example, you have to write and deploy a smart contract to almost do anything, right? Even to add a new block or add, as a user, generate new data and write that data to blockchain, you have to deploy a smart contract, right? So smart contract is that easy and that accessible like water in the Ethereum world. But if you kind of come to more on the private permission world of blockchain, then also there is, not exactly similar, but significant role of smart contracts as well. And so so I kind of look at smart contracts as the one, like in two categories, right? One that kind of helps achieve the basic operations of blockchain, and then ones that kind of, helps you achieve the network of participants towards the common goal or an objective, right, that they want to execute, a common mathematical function that they want to execute. And if you can, it's an interesting view, and we have collaborated or have been collaborating with quite a few academics in the US to kind of explore that area a little bit more. Especially one interesting aspect is the use of smart contract with the right kind of other, encryption algorithms and other privacy preserving mechanism. But can we have distributed and secure multi-party computations, right? So SMPC have been really a paradigm that has been explored outside of blockchain for a long time, right? And it has its, very key applications. And in some cases, we have been trying to answer the question based on, like in a private permission blockchain where some data is shared and universal and that resides on chain, but there could be some data which is private and that is kept on private databases of the participants. And for integrity, you can take a hash of that data and then store that hash pointer on blockchain so that in future, if you needed to prove out, let's say to an auditor or any government agency that you didn't tamper with your data on the private database, you can refer and match the hash, right, on the chain. So those are the privacy preserving mechanism. But are there ways to achieve that kind of secure multi-party computation of private data and public data, maybe a mix of public-private data using smart contracts, right? And I don't know the answer yet because it's a open research question that we have, but that could, if we kind of have the answer, then that could be an interesting paradigm. You can imagine some of the use cases, for example, right, where the tier 2 have their proprietary data and tier 1 have their data, OEM have their data, And in an operation like recall, right, where there are two types of recall, where OEM issues a recall, but there are government recalls as well. And when there is a government recall, then usually the government and agencies come and audit each and every player of the supply chain, because they want to identify the root cause of the issue, right? Why a part is malfunctioning in the field. And in those cases, all these different players, they share data with the agencies, but in a blockchain system, I think we have to figure out a way, how do I share data with the auditor, and the auditor can basically take everyone's data and in a secure and way perform that multi-party computation to get some answers, but without any of the players revealing data to one another, right? So a quite interesting problem. And I know this is partly an academic forum as well. So I wanted to share that in case, like this interests some of the academics in the forum and they kind of wanted to explore it on their own.
Yes, yes. We at the unfortunate part of the academic situation out here is that we still have to come to a deeper understanding of the applications of blockchains and the technology behind it, and that's one thing that we are looking at. And if I were to take you into a similar, a slightly different area now, one of the challenges that we face when it comes to blockchains and when it comes to technology like that is that we need to have an ecosystem which has to be ready to accept this kind of technology. When I talk of ecosystem, I'm talking not only of the organization, for example, not just Ford, but Ford has got probably multi-tier supply chains running 18,000 odd people in your supply chain, including transporters, including tier N suppliers. They also do, all of them need to be on a blockchain for the blockchain to be an effective solution in a situation like this? Or can I just have a smaller, tier one kind of a situation where I look tier one and the organization forming blockchains to create? How do I move ahead with this? Because when I look at India, I see significant sections of the supply chain not automated. So how blockchain work there?
That's a great question, actually. And we have, I won't say it's an Indian problem, it's a universal problem, right? Because no matter which country the supply chain exists, as you kind of traverse it, right? The more kind of, and if you imagine supply chain as a pyramid, then as you go down the layers in the pyramid, in the sub-tiers, right? The smaller and the smaller the companies become, right? So what you said is absolutely right. And so for a tier 3 or 4 supplier, right? Well, first of all, they don't have the IT capacity to onboard a blockchain solution. And also for their scale and their business model, their revenue, it doesn't make sense as well. They're just supplying a nuts and bolts, right? Screws. Yes. And why do they need the traceability of their nuts and bolts? It doesn't absolutely make sense for them, right? Yes. So you're absolutely right that we cannot have this ideal worldview that will map and onboard the entire supply chain. So it depends on use cases, right? And also we have to look for unique solutions. So I'll talk about one of the use cases where onboarding and mapping the entire supply chain makes sense. And then we already talked about where it doesn't, right? Yes. So the ethical sourcing kind of use cases is where, it really makes sense to onboard and map the entire supply chain, because one of the projects that Ford has participated in with other players is around responsible sourcing, and especially around conflict minerals, which are precious, such as cobalt, tungsten, magnesium. Majority of that is mined from one geographic region in the world, which is around the Democratic Republic of Congo in Africa. right? And that region, while from a mineral standpoint is very rich, there is a huge geopolitical conflict, right? And also really substandard employee condition, a lot of work hazards, child labor, forced labor, all of these are noted to happen and reported out by United Nations all the time. So we do want to make sure as responsible corporate citizens in the world that we are only sourcing from the ethical miners and who do not engage in this kind of inhuman practices, right? And so it is quite of a challenging problem, right? So one of the ways I think we did a pilot and that we kind of had that cradle to grave kind of mapping. So starting from the industrial miners who are operating in Congo to the cathode manufacturers who kind of take that mineral and make, in between there would be smelters and refiners who take that ore and refine it into something, a metal, and then the cathode manufacturer manufacture cathode, and then the battery manufacturer manufacture electric vehicle batteries, and then finally it comes to Ford and we install the battery into an electric vehicle. So this is kind of the supply chain, and there needs to be an end-to-end mapping to ensure the origin and the movement of the cobalt is happening in an ethical and responsible way. And there is still going to be the question that, yes, I onboarded the industrial mining corporation, but what about the mining sites that are operating in the field? And that's really where, I really love this example because I don't think blockchain is going to replace humans, but it is going to bring work together with humans and bring process efficiencies, right? Because in order to make sure that everything is happening on the site, in those small mines where people are working, we still need those third-party, nonprofit agencies to go and perform the audits, site audits, right? And actually, the pilot we did, we had actually one of those agencies called RCS Globals, which visits and audits each of these kind of sites and provides a certificate. So we had them on the blockchain network as well, where they audited and kind of issued certificates so that their audit results could be correlated and matched with the data on blockchain.
If I could just take 1 minute more of your time and kind of, ethical sourcing and responsibility are issues which are coming up more as a consumer activist. And one other issue that's closely allied with it is sustainability. Do you think blockchains have some role to play there also?
Also a very good question. And yes, but, I kind of think of, and I may repeat this, right? As some of the previous panelists have also said, whenever we look at a problem, we have to, it's not about what technology fits to that problem. Yes. It's more about let's solve the problem with the technologies that could enable the solution, right? So can blockchain be an enabler? Yes, it depends on the use case, right? So ethical sourcing or responsible sourcing is a huge one in the ESG space where blockchain is definitely playing a role. Another one, again, I have seen where there could be an opportunity is around end of life processing, right? Recycling. Yes. And really bringing, kind of keeping track of how, because if you think about plastic, then a huge source of the plastic pollution is actually automotive grade plastics, right? The tires. Yes. And the other plastic parts, which end up in the landfill. And so there could be, again, it would be a humongous task, but if there is a way to track and trace the vehicles and their parts and components in the field, which is more challenging because once the vehicle is out of warranty, the OEMs kind of tend to lose the sight of the vehicle, right? Because the owners are not always bringing the vehicle back to a dealership for maintenance. They could go on independent repair shop And that's where we don't have traceability. So that's really where I think, public-private partnerships or consortiums where some of this, there could be maybe a third-party trust anchors who kind of works to bring those independent players outside of the ecosystem on blockchain. And they don't have to really run a node. So I think that's also a myth we have to break, right? That a lot of people think that in order to join a blockchain, they have to run a node, which is a huge IT commitment. That's absolutely not true. Participating in a distributed application running on top of a blockchain network is also possible and meaningful, right? So if that's really kind of where I think there could be a future for the sustainability space, really the interplay of not only the core players in the automotive supply chain, but a lot of these third-party trust anchors, auditors, who are kind of helping bring the rest of the players into this solution, right? And if we have that traceability, then we can definitely probably turn around as more recycling facilities and technologies are coming up. We can turn around like our footprint in the world. I know that we're running out of time. And I do just want to, maybe next time we could also chat around carbon footprint, because that's another huge application, right? That blockchain can help track as well.
Yes, in fact, we will also, we also plan to have a specific event on sustainability where carbon footprint would be one of the core issues that we would want to talk about, and how we could kind of address and stay on top of what, how do we address carbon footprint? How do we track carbon footprint? So probably that's some place where we could again collaborate. As you said, we have come to the end of the time allotted to us. In fact, there was one question from a audience member. Would you like to take that? He's just asking from a business strategy to short-term raw material planning, which is the first area we should implement blockchain? Does the question make any?
Can you repeat the question?
From a business strategy to short-term, which is the first area we should implement blockchain?
Okay, so which is the first area? I thought I heard also something about raw material planning.
Yeah, he has written from a business strategy to short-term RM planning, which is the first area where we should implement blockchain.
Okay, I think that's an interesting, comment, and there definitely, like, I would say there is definitely something there, because one of the use cases in supply chain space we also explored was, responsible sourcing, which is part of your raw material planning. And those are, and why that is needed, I would definitely say that there are two reasons, right? Not only that is the right thing to do for all of the humanitarian reasons I mentioned, but that's also one of the easy ones to do. And, because blockchain, to be honest, is still suffering from a lot of cultural hangups, right? Because it became popular back in the day with Bitcoin, and a lot of people still associated with the cryptocurrency side of it, right? And there is not a lot of education and awareness in the industry that especially in the private permission world of blockchain, it could be also a very effective tool for multi-party data sharing in a secure and verifiable way. And so there are those anxieties, especially among many, I think, sub-tier suppliers who don't have a big, innovation team. There is that lack of education, and they become anxious that, do I have to share my business proprietary data, right? And I don't want to, because this idea of a distributed ledger really, really is scary. And that is actually in many cases an invalid anxiety, and we have to do better in educating and addressing that anxiety. But on the same case, when you bring in a responsible sourcing kind of use case, then it's easier to recruit or onboard your tier suppliers and even sub-tiers to rally around that case, because again, it's the right thing to do. And in many areas, especially in Europe, there is very strong regulation around it, right? And then also in every region, then there is that customs and border control, where you also have to show proof of origin, right? So that's why this kind of RM planning or that kind of use cases, I would say, is really an effective way to onboard, or kind of probably in Ford, we kind of say now, near, far. Now is like in this year, near is next 1 to 4 years, and far is really out. And so some of the now use cases, I completely agree with that comment, are really around this case, this kind of RM planning, because of the reasons.
Thanks, Pramita. We have exceeded our time by 5 minutes. I thank you for having patiently put up with the slight overrun that we have had. It was lovely chatting up with you. Yes, there have been quite a number of takeaways, and specifically when it comes to issues of ethical sourcing and responsible sourcing. These are issues where, as you said, not only is it the right thing to do, but also from a consumer perspective, it also gives a consumer kind of satisfaction that what I am consuming is not at the cost of another human being suffering. I think that assurance that comes up is something that is going to become increasingly relevant. I thank you for taking time off. I know it's early morning for you. Thank you very much for taking time off and speaking to our audience. We definitely shall keep in touch. We will definitely pick your brains again in future in terms of bringing in your thoughts and your insights into a much larger forum. Thank you, Pramita. It was lovely having you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. With that, we come to the end of the town hall. I once again thank Blockage for having partnered with us and created this opportunity for us to bring blockchain to the larger audience in India. I thank Kumar very specifically, and Geeta also from Blockage. I also thank the I thank the audience for staying up with us and also asking some very interesting questions, some very engaging questions. I hope we have answered as much of it as possible. Thank you very much for sending in your questions. It was a nice experience. And finally, the last but not the least, I would like to thank Team ISCM for pulling off another successful town hall, this time on blockchain, specifically Rupali. Thank you very much. We will be seeing you soon. We will be in touch with you. Keep visiting our website, iscmforums.com, for more updates on the other events that we have. Thank you very much and have a nice night. Good night.